Financial Secretary Paul Chan announces his second budget. Donald Trump meets Vietnamese leaders ahead of his summit with Kim Jong-un in Hanoi. And Pakistan shoots down Indian fighter jets following an Indian airstrike.
Good evening. Financial Secretary Paul Chan today unveiled the government's 2019 to 2020 budget, which sees a cut in sweeteners when compared with his budget last year. Chan said the current financial year is expected to end up with a surplus of $58.7 billion. That's much lower than last year's figure. So the one-off relief measures this time around will be less generous. Comprehensive Social Security assistance, old age allowance, and old age living allowance recipients will enjoy 1 month's extra payment instead of 2 as in the last budget. Salaries tax and profit tax rebates, as well as rates waivers, are still in place, though with a lower ceiling. Senior citizens will also receive, on a one-off basis, an additional $1,000 worth of benefits under the Elderly Health Care Voucher Scheme.
OK, we'll take a closer look at the budget later in the news. And now we'll cross over to Vietnam, where US President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un are going to have their second summit in just over 8 months. They will have brief talks tonight, followed by dinner. The two are expected to continue their discussions tomorrow for ending North Korea's nuclear weapons program. Our reporter, Elmi Lung, is in the Vietnamese capital in Hanoi, standing by.
Now, about 10 to 15 minutes ago, there were easily 20 to 30 vehicles that stopped right outside here, the Sofitel Metropole Hotel. But unfortunately, we could not see who got out of those vehicles. What we do know so far is that 7:30 Hong Kong time, Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un will be meeting right inside. And they will first hold a 20-minute one-on-one meeting before going to have dinner together. And that will last about 90 minutes. Now, the summit will continue tomorrow. But as of now, we remain unsure if the second session will also be hosted here at the Metropole Hotel, but we will definitely keep you posted of the latest. Back to you in Hong Kong.
OK, thank you very much, Elmi. And that was Elmi Lung reporting from Hanoi. Well, earlier today, Trump met with Vietnam's leadership, signed a few trade deals and thanked them for hosting the summit. Light rain and mist greeted both the leaders of North Korea and the United States as they woke this morning in Hanoi. Tonight marks the beginning of their 2-day encounter in the Vietnamese capital. But before that, there was business to be done. US President Donald Trump and his Vietnamese counterpart Nguyen Phu Trong presided over the signing of several trade deals. The most significant of these included agreements to sell 110 Boeing planes to the Vietnamese carriers Vietjet and Bamboo Airways in a deal worth billions of dollars. Vietjet pledged to buy up to 100 Boeing 737 MAX jets, while Bamboo will purchase 10 Boeing 787-9 Dreamliners. Trump thanked Vietnam for hosting the second summit and expected good things to come out of the meetings between him and Kim Jong-un. Once again, Trump was determined to encourage North Korea to look to Vietnam's example as a potential model to follow for future economic success.
You really are an example as to what can happen with good thinking. And on behalf of the United States, I want to thank you very much for hosting, and hopefully great things will happen later on with our meeting. But a lot of good things are happening before, and that's the signing of trade deals with the United States, and we appreciate it very much.
Trump also met with Vietnam's Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc, thanking him for the Boeing purchase and for considering an order of American-made weapons.
I really appreciate the orders that you made today of Boeing and General Electric and the various other companies that will be selling you aircraft. I also appreciate the fact that you're looking at much of our military equipment. We make the best military equipment in the world by far.
Trump is accompanied tonight by US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney. Kim is bringing with him Kim Yong-chol, a key negotiator in talks with the US, and Ri Yong Ho, the Foreign Affairs Minister. Okay, we're going to take you back to Hanoi right now, where you will see, or you see live pictures of US President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un sitting together for their brief 20-minute one-on-one meeting. And that's before the two of them go to dinner. And they will be accompanied by various aides and officials. Trump will be, as we said earlier, Trump will be accompanied by Mike Pompeo, the US Secretary of State, and Kim will be accompanied by senior officials advising them as the two discuss issues over dinner. And then the pair will meet again tomorrow to continue the discussions on North Korea's nuclear weapons program.
In other news, Pakistan says it is not pushing the environment towards war with India after shooting down Indian fighter jets on its side of the disputed region of Kashmir. The escalation came hours after Pakistan said mortar shells fired by Indian troops killed 6 civilians and wounded several others. Both sides are now reportedly trading fire in the disputed region. Our Jeff Tang reports.
It is never good news whenever there's an escalation of conflict between two neighboring countries. It is especially bad news when both neighbors happen to be armed with nuclear weapons. So when Pakistan announced it shot down a couple of Indian warplanes on its side of the disputed region of Kashmir just hours after a deadly airstrike by India, tensions flared. But Pakistan was quick to deny that it wanted to push for war, pointing out that the pilots of the downed Indian fighters are alive and being treated well.
If that was the case, we could have easily engaged the target on which our Air Force locked first. That would have resulted into human casualties and the collateral damage as well. We engaged a nearby open space where there was no human life or no military post.
Following the incident, Pakistan's Civil Aviation Authority said it shut down Pakistani airspace to all commercial flights without indicating when the flights might resume. Pakistan urged India to take the path of peace through dialogue and denied it had retaliated against an earlier airstrike by India. Meanwhile, Indian news reports said airports in the Indian portion of Kashmir closed for civilian traffic shortly after its fighter jets crashed. Earlier, New Delhi said its warplanes killed a very large number of fighters when they struck a terrorist training camp in northwestern Pakistan. The airstrike near Balakot, a town 50 kilometers from the frontier dividing the two sectors of Kashmir, was the deepest cross-border raid launched by India since the last of its 3 wars with Pakistan in 1971. Speaking at a Russia-India-China trilateral meeting in Wuzhen in eastern China, India's External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj said that global cooperation is needed to fight against militant attacks amidst fierce tensions between India and Pakistan. Kashmir is split between Pakistan and India and claimed by both countries, while troops from both sides often trade fire in the disputed region. Jeff Tang, TVB News.
And now we return to the budget. The Financial Secretary says it's a budget to support enterprises, safeguard jobs, stabilise the economy and strengthen livelihoods. But as Haley Joe reports, with the lower than expected 3% economic growth last year, the city's budgetary belt has been tightened with comparatively less sweetness for the public.
Wage earners may not be too happy about this year's budget as relief measures have been reduced compared with last year. Among the measures, reducing salaries and profits tax by 75%. The same measure from last year, but the ceiling got lowered from $30,000 to $20,000. Rates will be waived for 4 quarters subject to a ceiling of $1,500 per quarter for each rateable property. Last year, the waiver was capped at $2,500. In addition, welfare recipients will get an extra month's payment. Last year, they were offered the amount equal to 2 months' payments. This comes as the fiscal surplus this year is expected to be $58.7 billion, less than half of last year's figure. Financial Secretary Paul Chan said it's largely due to reduced revenues from land premium and stamp duties. He announced a mere 1.3% economic growth for the last quarter, mainly affected by trade tension. Along with China's slowing economy, cooling property prices in Hong Kong and gyrations in the stock market dragged down the city's full-year growth to 3%. Chan forecast a 2 to 3% growth for 2019. To help local businesses, business registration fees for 2019-20 will be waived. An extra $1 billion will go to the Branding, Upgrading and Domestic Sales Fund, which provides support for enterprises looking to enter new markets. Each business now can receive funding up to $3 million, up from $2 million. The government will also provide support for small and medium-sized enterprises facing liquidity issues through enhanced SME financing guarantee scheme. Haley Zhou, TVB News.
The government's recurrent expenditure on public health care services is estimated to rise by nearly 11% to around $80 billion. Our Kena Chu has more.
A $10 billion public health care stabilization fund will be set up for the hospital authority to cope with unanticipated circumstances. The medical sector lawmaker is happy with the plan.
In past 15 years, that there are 5 to 6 years the recurrent budget to hospital authority decrease. In the future, when the government think that they need to decrease the overall expenditure, we can take some money from that fund.
It will also allocate more than $700 million in recurrent funding to the hospital authority in support of frontline staff, such as by improving the rate of the special honorarium scheme allowance. $5 billion will be allocated to upgrade and acquire new medical equipment. Additionally, a recurrent subvention of $400 million will be used to expand the drug formulary. For primary care, the SAR's First District Health Center in Kwai Tsing is expected to go into service in the third quarter this year. The government has earmarked $150 million for operational and staff costs. Kena Chu, TVB News.
And the budget also has plans to boost healthcare and assisted living for senior citizens. Ken Long has more.
Some good news for senior citizens. First, in another round of one-off, each will receive an extra $1,000 worth of elderly health care vouchers. The accumulation limit was also hiked from $5,000 to $8,000. For those who require assisted living, an extra 500 residential care places and 300 subsidized daycare places will be in place over the next 2 years. $20 billion was also earmarked to purchase 60 properties to accommodate 130 welfare facilities, including neighborhood elderly centers. As for service enhancement, $200 million will be used to provide Wi-Fi services to 1,350 service units subvented by the Social Welfare Department. The department will also use the funding to provide Wi-Fi service to 180 welfare facilities which it operates. The 4-year pilot project is aimed at encouraging the use of tech products to improve elderly and rehab services. Meanwhile, the 45,000 residents of private elderly homes have not been forgotten. There will be a pilot scheme to offer them outreach services, including social workers and physiotherapists. KW TVB News.
The government is setting aside $2 billion to support NGOs in constructing transitional housing. It is estimated about 100,400 units of public flats will be built in the next 5 years. Over 70% of them are public rental housing units. That, as well as units to be offered under the Green Form Subsidized Home Ownership Scheme. As for the private sector, an average of 18,800 residential units are expected to be completed annually in the coming 5 years. A total of 15 residential sites capable of providing more than 8,800 residential units will be included in the 2019 to 2020 land sales program.
Meanwhile, students in need will be getting a one-off grant of $2,500 from the government to enhance teenagers' mental health. 2 school social workers for each school will be implemented in more than 460 secondary schools. Also in the budget, $16 billion for publicly funded universities to enhance campus facilities, in particular for research and development. Places like laboratories will be getting double funding of $800 million. The government will also continue to pay fees for candidates sitting the 2020 Hong Kong Diploma of Secondary Education examination.
The finance chief also promised more money on other initiatives aimed at improving the city's living environment. Our Christy Lung with that story.
A more interconnected and accessible harbourfront is what the government wants to build. It will earmark $6 billion to extend the existing 20 kilometres worth of promenades to 34 kilometres in 10 years. Public toilets around town may soon get a facelift. The government will allocate $600 million to improve the hygiene in some 240 public toilets in the coming 5 years. To strengthen public education and promote proper tree care, a $200 million urban forestry support fund will be set up. Good news for electric car owners. The government will allocate $120 million to extend charging networks for electric vehicles at government car parks. Christy Lung, TVB News.
And still ahead in our newscast, the U.S. House of Representatives blocks Trump's emergency declaration. The U.S. seeks a UN Security Council vote on Venezuela over aid shipments. And Nigeria's president wins a second term of office.
There's still hope.
Hope is painful.
It's the most aggressive form of brain cancer.
Aaron, you can't stop fighting.
I'm dying.
You have to accept.
No, I don't.
Julia, stop! I don't want to think about dying.
I have a lot to learn from you. I love you.
I love you too.
Thursday, The Good Doctor, the season finale at 10:40 on Pearl.
There's a filament inside what looks like a giant electric bulb.
To this day, there are still eerie mysteries surrounding the ancients that scientists cannot explain.
Modern scientific analysis shows that the cicala bird conforms to our understanding of aerodynamics.
Friday, Ancient Top 10 at 9:35 on Pearl.
我们遵行大诫命，了解社区的需要。
Understand Christianity from Chinese believers around the world.
我们带领教会弟兄姐妹，无论有钱没钱，都经历了神的供应。
Sunday afternoon, Showers of Blessing at 3:30 on Pearl.
有啲嘢可以放低一時，但好難放低一世。富慧相信退休之後，你可以更盡情去做你一直想做嘅自己。我哋會為你度身訂造退休3大範疇，結合儲蓄、保障、傳承，全方位支持你退休任我行。FWD 富慧保險。
And you? What would you do for love? Miss Dior, the new eau de toilette.
返學要準時，
夠鐘去機場啦。
搭飛機要準時，出糧都要準時。
僱主如果拖欠薪金，一經定罪，最高刑罰係罰款35萬同監禁3年。
董事、經理或有關負責人都可能要負上相同刑責。
仲有啊，如果明知冇能力出糧，仲繼續僱用員工都係犯法㗎。
拖欠薪金屬違法，準時出糧應盡責。查詢熱線27171771。
Britain's finest performances that are winning the hearts of viewers and judges alike.
I mean, you can't believe what you're watching. So the ambition is win the show, world domination.
This is just gorgeous.
Saturday and Sunday at 8:30, Britain's Got Talent, Season 12 on Pearl.
Welcome back to TVB News. The U.S. House of Representatives have voted to block President Donald Trump's emergency declaration to build a border wall.
One by one, Democratic members of Congress explained their reasons for attempting to overturn Trump's decision to use billions of dollars in emergency funds to build a wall along the U.S. border with Mexico.
This is the most consequential vote we will take in a generation on the balance of powers between the legislative and the executive branches of government.
Well, we are not going to give any president, Democratic or Republican, a blank check
to shred the Constitution of the United States.
But many House Republicans voted against the proposal because to them, a wall is critically needed.
I support the president's efforts. I believe he is well within the law in making this declaration.
Texans know something others in this chamber apparently don't know. We are at war on the southern border with the drug cartels.
On this vote, the yeas are 245. The nays are 182. The joint resolution is passed without objection. The motion.
The move now forces a vote in the Senate. But critics are calling the resolution a waste of time because Trump has already threatened to veto it. Still, one U.S. senator is banking on the courts to side with Democrats.
The president may prevail on the veto, but in the end, he loses because the courts will reverse him.
Meanwhile, the US will seek a UN Security Council vote this week on a resolution calling for Venezuela's government to let in humanitarian aid and to hold free elections. Speaking at a UN Security Council session, US envoy Elliot Abrams accused Nicolas Maduro's government of mobilizing armed gangs, thugs and criminals released from prison to control Venezuela's borders. Washington had called the meeting days after Maduro's troops violently drove back US-backed foreign aid convoys from Venezuela's borders with Colombia and Brazil. The clashes led to the burning of 8 trucks and a number of protesters being killed. Opposition leader and self-declared interim president Juan Guaido has vowed to return home to mobilize new protests against Maduro. Guaido flouted a court travel ban and crossed into Colombia last week to help move aid shipments across the border. Former Vatican treasurer Cardinal George Pell is behind bars after he was remanded into custody pending his sentencing for sexually abusing 2 choir boys 2 decades ago. Pell, the most senior Catholic cleric to be convicted for child sex offences, was found guilty in December of 5 charges related to the abuse of the 13-year-old boys while he was the Archbishop of Melbourne. Pell's guilty verdict was revealed yesterday after a court suppression order was dropped. Pell was back in court today for his sentence plea hearing, where his bail was revoked and he was taken into custody. He will be sentenced on March the 13th. Each of the 5 offences of which Pell was found guilty carries a maximum 10 years in prison. Australia's Prime Minister offered words of support to Pell's victims.
Muhammadu Buhari has won a 2nd term as president of Nigeria. The Electoral Commission confirmed 76-year-old Buhari secured 56% of the vote. He thanked his supporters and vowed to work even harder on boosting the economy, fighting corruption, and stepping up security. Still, the election was marred by violence. Deaths resulted from clashes over allegations of vote fraud and stolen ballot boxes. Voting took place last Saturday after a week-long delay. As supporters of Buhari celebrated in the streets, the losing party began demanding a recount. Democratic Party challenger Atiku Abubakar claims election data has been manipulated. All right, Tony, what do you have for us in sports today?
We start off with some action from the NBA. The Boston Celtics, one of the preseason favourites in the Eastern Conference, continue to struggle, losing for the 3rd time since the All-Star break. They fell 118-95 to the Toronto Raptors. Alan Buckner has the action.
A lack of togetherness is turning into big trouble for the Celtics, with coach Brad Stevens saying the players just aren't on the same page. They kept things close in the first quarter, Toronto newcomer Jeremy Lin scoring on a layup here to tie things at 30. But in the second quarter, things fell apart for the Celtics, with Toronto opening up a 20-point lead. Pascal Siakam had a game-high 25 points for the Raptors, with all-star Kawhi Leonard adding 21 points. Marcus Morris led the Celtics with 17 points, with Jason Tatum and Terry Rozier adding 11 each. With the win, the Raptors extend their home winning streak against Boston to 8 games. Their 45-17 record is second best in the NBA behind Milwaukee. Boston, with a 37-24 record, is in 5th place in the East. Alan Booknia, TVB News.
To tennis now, and first round action at the Mexico Open in Acapulco. Top seed Rafa Nadal used a strong forehand to take control of his match with Misha Zverev. The world number 2 coasted to a 6-3, 6-3 win over the German. The Spaniard will now face Nick Kyrgios of Australia in the next round.
A good start for me, never easy against Misha, and especially after a while without competing. And I had some problem in the hand the last couple of days without practicing much, so it's an important victory for me.
And from all of us, thanks for joining us.
Bye for now.
Carbs are really hard to avoid. They're in almost all cheap food and junk food.
Carbs, they are right at the heart of our diet. Are they really a killer, as claimed by many?
That's 20 sugar cube equivalents.
You have to be careful about what you're putting in your mouth.
Tonight, the truth about carbs at 8:30 on Pearl's Wellbeing. From the Olmecs in ancient Mexico.